At issue this week, welcoming the world. Big events are expected to draw a lot of tourists to Philadelphia in 2026. How local officials are preparing to take full advantage. And swing state, Pennsylvania is once again a key battleground in 2026 as control of the U.S. House is up for grabs. Experts say another part of the state just became a toss-up. Tax deadline. If you haven't filed yet, what things should you keep in mind to help you maximize your refund? A financial planner joins us to discuss that and more.
NBC10 at Issue starts now.
I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to NBC10 at Issue. As America gets set to celebrate its 250th birthday, tourism officials here in America's birthplace are expecting a surge of visitors. People aren't just coming here for the historic sites. Philadelphia area is also hosting big sporting events, including the PGA Championship at Mayk, FIFA World Cup matches at Lincoln Financial Field, and the MLB All-Star Game at Citizens Bank Park. To talk more about this, we're joined by Joe Heller, the Chief Marketing Officer for the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Welcome, Joe. Great to see you.
Very much. Great to see you.
So it is here. 2026 has arrived. I want to talk to you about what's ahead for this year and then what's ahead beyond. But let's start now in 2026. We started to see the big events, saw the March Madness. Are you guys learning anything as you go that in terms of maybe changes the city needs to make or that you need to make to really get the most out of this?
Yeah, I think it's all about preparation, right? We are a big event city, and so we host big events year in and year out. And so there's always an assessment of how the events are going and what we can learn from it. You know, I think as we look towards this summer, some of these events are new to us. FIFA, no one has hosted that in the U.S., and so there's a great deal of anticipation of what that's going to bring. But events like the PGA Championship coming to Mayk in May, even the MLB All-Star Game, they're events we've been able to pre-scout and see how they've performed on their markets. And so, I think there's a lot of excitement, and I think there's a lot to learn on the fly. But there's also a lot of resources that we're putting out there for travelers. So again, it's more of an assess how we go, but then also make sure that visitors coming to the city know what they can expect.
You mentioned FIFA. I wanted to ask you something about that we saw already that I think surprised some people, which was they had reserved a bunch of rooms then ended up getting canceled. And I wondered how that affected things. Is that sort of the normal way to operate, or did that affect things in terms of visitors who maybe thought they couldn't get a room and made other plans?
It's a little both. It's not uncommon for big events, whether they're conventions, whether they're conferences, or whether they're sporting events, to have a block of rooms that they change over time. So, there's contractual obligations for certain commitments, but there's also deadlines that come with that. So we weren't too surprised that there's changes. A lot of these big events make changes. At the same time, that means there's more rooms on the market for fans. And so, pretty much stay tuned to see what's available as well. But the general concept is more availability.
So maybe people who thought they couldn't come ultimately.
Yes, and again,
they can come.
For the messaging that we're putting in the marketplace is that Philadelphia is a welcoming city. We're just announced the Fan Fest that'll be coming for 39 days over the entire course of the FIFA World Cup. And so there's a lot of reasons to come. And, what we've learned is 70% of the people who come for the FIFA World Cup actually don't come with a ticket. So between room availability and other events that'll be off-site from the stadium complex like the Fan Fest, there's plenty of reasons to come to Philadelphia. How
do you handle things that are really beyond your control? I mean, you talked about preparation. You're preparing. The city's preparing. Hotels are preparing. There are things that are beyond your control. I think about FIFA, and I think about some of the questions about, are there going to be ICE agents, in an area that might affect whether people attend games or matches. Things like that are really just beyond your control. How do you handle the possibility of those things?
I think there's one of the biggest ways we do is we rely on associations like the U.S. Travel Association. They'll be bringing us to Washington, D.C. next week to brief us on what's going on internationally and also here in the U.S. so that we can put out accurate information about what the visitor experience is going to be like from traveling abroad to Philadelphia and beyond. So that helps with us make sure that our messaging is crisp and accurate, because there's a lot of bad information out there. But it also, we want to instill confidence in travelers. So the more information we can put out in advance about what the experience at the airport is going to be like, how to, use Uber and taxis to get around town, the fact that our city is walkable. The more we can explain, the more confidence they have in our marketplace, and the more likely they are to choose Philadelphia. The other thing, too, is the hospitality ecosystem is such a collaborative network, not just here in Philadelphia, but across the country. So we learn from other destinations, whether they're on the West Coast, the Midwest, or here on the East Coast, what they're hearing, what they're seeing, how they're tackling challenges, and what are the best practices to adopt. So I take comfort in the fact that there's a lot of conversation about a lot of these topics from the federal level and what we do to work together with U.S. Travel Association, but also with other entities like the Convention and Visitors Bureau around the country.
I want to talk about some of the data that you put out recently about what you're seeing. International travel is something that has been talked about a lot because it's been so important for Philadelphia. And you saw a drop, quite a significant drop in international travel, especially from Canada. You are expecting to see things come up, but not quite to the level they were at before. What do you think it's going to take to get that international travel back?
That's a great question. I mean, what international travel means to Philadelphia is over 1 million visitors a year and $1 billion to the economy. So it's a very important sector for the travel economy. Looking ahead to recover to where we were pre-pandemic, we're looking out to 2030 at this point. 2025 was a bit of a setback, but the good news is that what the changes in travel here in Philadelphia, the projections mirrored the national average, and sometimes in certain categories, Philadelphia outperformed the national average. So we're taking comfort in the fact that Philadelphia is still in demand. Looking to this year, we are expecting to see about a 4.5% uptick in international travel, and a lot of that is attributed to the World Cup. So we think that this summer will be a bounce back year for Philadelphia. But as we look ahead to 2030 now, it seems to be on an upward trajectory, which is very positive because we're looking to get back to where we were. Again, still comparing things to before the pandemic.
Recently, I know that you had the mayor speak at your big event here in Philadelphia, looking forward with tourism. She's also proposing in her budget something that would affect hotels here, which is a 2% boost in the hotel tax. That would have to be approved by the state in Harrisburg in order for it to go forward. But what are you hearing from hotels, from the hospitality industry about that? Is it something that they're open to or have some concerns about?
I haven't been in many of those meetings, but I think the general sentiment is there may be other solutions or alternatives
to find that money somewhere else.
Yeah, but we also support the mayor's initiatives and efforts to address the unhoused population, and
that's where that money is supposed to go. I think it would fund additional beds. Right. I think 1,000 beds.
So the good news is that the hospitality community stands together with the mayor's office to endorse, a plan moving forward. I just think that the hospitality community might suggest other alternatives.
Okay. Have those conversations happened with the mayor's office, with the council? Or, I'm sorry, with the city council?
I don't think it's progressed to that far just yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you expect that those conversations
I assume that the conversations are not complete, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, we will watch that space. All right, more to come, but great to have you here, Joe. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Battleground Pennsylvania. In this midterm election year, which of the state's congressional districts could swing either way and help decide who controls the House? We have expert analysis straight ahead.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
Purple Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, has been a critical swing state in the presidential election. And this year, there are several congressional districts that could swing either way in the midterms. Whichever way they go, that could determine which party controls Congress next year. The Cook Political Report tracks these House races, and we're joined now by their U.S. House editor, Erin Covey. Welcome to NBC10 at Issue.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So as you look at the map, what are Republicans facing to hold on to the House in November? Give us the top line view.
Yeah, so Republicans have an incredibly tenuous hold on the House right now. Democrats only would need to flip 3 seats to take control of the House in 2027. And right now, the battleground of competitive districts is relatively small, but it should give Democrats more than enough opportunities to do so. Our current ratings have 14 Republicans sitting in toss-up seats, while just 3 Democrats sit in toss-up seats. And of course, 3 of those 14 Republicans are members of Congress from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, let's talk about that. First of all, before we get into that, how do you determine what is a toss-up seat? Kind of explain your ratings to us. How do you decide what's a toss-up, what's leaning Republican, what's leaning Democrat?
It's a good question. There's no secret formula for this, but we take in a lot of data when we're making these decisions, a combination of recent election results, both at the congressional level and how the district has voted at the presidential level and other statewide races as well. We look at polling, both public and private, and we talk to the campaigns on both sides and meet with candidates when we can to determine whether or not these races are rated toss-up, lean Republican, lean Democrat, likely Republican, likely Democrat, or solid Republican and solid Democrat.
You've had the seat in the Lehigh Valley, currently held by Ryan McKenzie, as a toss-up. You recently, though, added a Pennsylvania seat to your list of toss-ups. That's the one in the Scranton area, the 8th district, held by Rob Bresnahan as a toss-up. What changed there to prompt that shift for you?
Yeah, so Pennsylvania's 8th district is a Republican-leaning seat normally. It has shifted to the right in recent years. Trump won it by about 8.5 points in 2024. And so in a normal, more neutral political environment, this probably would not be a toss-up. But we shifted it for a couple of reasons. One reason being that the broader political environment is favorable to Democrats right now, given where the president's approval rating is at. And then, of course, with this district in particular, the Republican member of Congress here, Rob Bresnahan, who's a freshman, has had some issues with stock trading that has been extensively covered by national and local media over the past year. He's been one of the most prolific traders in Congress, despite the fact that he had previously campaigned on members of Congress and on banning members of Congress from stock trading. And that has become a real issue for him and made him more vulnerable than he would be otherwise.
And I mentioned the Lehigh Valley seat. Ryan McKenzie holds that seat right now. Why do you consider that one to be a toss-up?
Pennsylvania 7 is on paper the most difficult of these seats that Republicans hold in Pennsylvania. And that's because this is a seat where Trump only carried it by about 3 points in 2024. Ryan McKenzie, who's a freshman, only won his race by about a point last cycle. And so this is going to be a really tough race for him because he is no longer running in a more neutral or favorable to Republicans political environment like he had in 2024. Now, we don't know who is going to be his opponent on the Democratic side. They have a pretty crowded, kind of contentious primary playing out right now that will be resolved next month. But at this point, this is a seat that, regardless of who is running, is going to be competitive by nature of the partisanship of the district.
Pennsylvania has more toss-ups, according to your calculations, than any other state. What does that tell you? Is there a common theme there?
Yeah, it's a good question. The third toss-up race that we have is Pennsylvania's 10th district, held by Republican Scott Perry. This is a seat that has been trending Democrats' way a little bit over the past decade. But I think this just goes to show that, a lot of these states, when you look at the congressional districts, most of them either heavily favor Republicans or heavily favor Democrats. There are not that many truly competitive districts in the country, and there's just a disproportionate number in Pennsylvania. And so and they're spread out all across the state. You have Northeast Pennsylvania, Central Pennsylvania, the Lehigh Valley. And then I also want to mention Brian Fitzpatrick's in a district in the North Philadelphia suburbs that has the potential, Bucks County, to be competitive. This is a seat that Harris actually narrowly carried. But Fitzpatrick has a pretty long history of overperforming the top of the ticket and winning over some independent and Democratic voters. And so we have his race rated likely Republican, but that's a race that could certainly become more competitive as we get closer to November.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Erin Covey from Cook Political Report, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Countdown to April 15th. If you haven't filed your taxes yet, what should you be keeping in mind this year to help you maximize your refund? A financial planner joins us after a quick break.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
Welcome back to NBC10 at Issue. The deadline to file your taxes is fast approaching. It is just days away, and there are some new factors to consider this year. Joining us now for more is tax expert Jamie Hopkins. He is CEO of Bryn Mawr Trust Advisors and a frequent guest here on NBC10 at Issue. Great to see you, Jamie.
Great to see you, too.
So for folks who have not filed yet, either themselves or gotten their information to an accountant, what are sort of these last-minute things that they need to be thinking about this year?
So, as you said, we're days away, so
Yeah.
get all of your things in Monday as soon as possible at this point. Unlikely any CPA that's out there, if you're going to a CPA, is going to be able to get this done if you're turning it in the next couple days. If you're self-filing, e-filing, you can do that, whether you're using one of the kind of TurboTax is really the biggest one out there, but there are other ones. But make sure you get this in by the 15th. There's two things about the 15th. One, it's our payment day for taxes. If you owe taxes and don't get them in by the 15th, you will owe penalties from there forward. We also have a filing deadline, meaning we have to file our taxes. That one you can extend. If you're not ready, you can say, hey, let's extend this out into October. That's okay. But you have to think of it as two separate things, a filing deadline and a tax payment day deadline. Even if you extend out to October, you have no idea what you owe in taxes, you owe them on the 15th.
So let's talk about what might be different this year that maybe people are unfamiliar with. There have been some changes, the no taxes on tips and no taxes on overtime being some of the changes. First of all, what do people need to know about that? How do they go about actually getting a benefit from that?
Yeah, and a couple things. The SALT deductions also changed, so we might have a bigger deduction there if you own a house and or if you're paying property taxes, state income taxes. So those are all
SALT
benefits.
meaning state and local taxes that you can deduct from your
Correct.
federal ones.
So you've got a lot of really good things here. People are expecting about 10% higher tax refunds this year than previous years. So that should be good for a lot of people. Now, the thing is, you still have to file. We don't actually know before you file whether or not all of those things will kick in. Most of those are income-based. So actually, if you make too much income from other jobs, those benefits might go away. So they had thresholds for these, including the state and local tax deduction, that if you make too much money, that new benefit won't be there. And it might not be from your day-to-day job. It might be because you have two side hustles and rental income and these other income sources that move your total income up, and you don't get those benefits. But
so you really need to do all the calculations before you know what your benefit is.
Yeah, and it's all of them. So those side hustles, that's very normal today. We've got 2-3 jobs out there. You have to put all of that together, and that can be that surprise moment. You get your W-2, but you forget about those 1099 income sources. Those are those side businesses you might have. You got to put that all together before we can really figure out, are you going to get all the benefits from the new tax bill?
Is there anything that you have seen in terms of calculating the no taxes on tips and no taxes on overtime that people might be missing?
Well, I think the big thing that we have seen is that people aren't reporting them. That is not what the law said. So what we're doing is we're seeing people that do have overtime or do have tips, and we know that from previous tax filings, and they're just saying they have zero. That's not it. You do have to still report these. So if you haven't told your CPA or you're not putting them in yourself, remember, you do have to report it to the IRS. It's not that you can just make the money.
It doesn't disappear.
It doesn't disappear.
Right.
You just won't be taxed on it.
It needs to be recorded. That's
Correct.
That's important for people to know. Jamie, while you're here, I do want to ask you about something else that you've been working on other than talking to us and giving us some of your expertise, which is that you've been working on a book. It is called Your Retirement Sketchbook. Tell me sort of how this came about and what it is now that it's out.
Yeah, so it just came out about a week ago, and we just hit the USA Today top 10 bestseller list. So super proud of that and everybody who participated in it. But it's about making retirement fun. My statement has been trying to be the enemy of a boring retirement plan. And it's about sketching out, actually sketching. So it says sketches. There's 125 sketches in here that go along with 125 different financial planning topics to be like snackable, bite-sized. It's not a book that was written to be read from page 1 to page 300. Pick a chapter.
Look for what interests you or what is important to you and your family.
And then draw it. And we have spots in the book to draw things. People are visual learners. We learn better when we engage with visuals. But very few of the things that we have out there in our space are visual. We talk about taxes. You rarely see a visual in it. So we talk about taxes and show taxes in a visual format. And I think that's so important for all of us. I'm a visual learner, so I wanted to make something that is how most people learn.
All right. Jamie Hopkins, great to see you.
Great to see you, too. Thank you.
If you still have to file your taxes, NBC10 Responds has some help for you. We have a full page with all of the tax filing resources you'll need and how you can get the most out of your refund. Scan the QR code on your screen, and that takes you directly to NBC10 Responds, maximizing your tax refund tools. We'll be right back.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
Do you know a local organization working to make a difference in our community? NBC10 and Telemundo 62 are teaming up to make a positive impact with local impact grants powered by Comcast Universal. Local impact grants give money to local nonprofits tackling everyday problems. Learn more about the program and submit your entry at NBC10.com/local impact grants. You can also scan the QR code on your screen. Applications must be received by April 24th. That does it for this edition of NBC10 at Issue. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.